Hello, Eric Greenwater here. You may notice I tamed the beast on my face. The only reason is my little daughter she's just a few months old and she's just starting to grab me and trying to rip my beard off. She's like David taking the lion by the beard, and I just didn't want to resist it. I just went with it. Because it does hurt to tug on the beard. It'll grow back. I'm also, instead of a pipe today, I'm smoking a cigar. I don't smoke cigars all the time, but I do enjoy them. And this is a Rocky Patel. A buddy of mine gave me some, and so figured I might as well enjoy it with y'all. Not bad. Different change of pace. Cigars, they definitely have a stronger taste. If you've not smoked cigars or pipe tobacco tends to be more mellow, depending on what you're smoking. Whereas cigars tend to be more strong, but there's different. Like, this is a little bit darker one. There's more mild ones. To me, there's more nuance of flavor in pipe tobacco. But I'm pretty sure the cigars is all its own world. It's very popular for that reason. To me, it seems most of the time when I'm by myself or in a small group, I want to smoke pipes. It tends to be more of a solitary practice. It's more ritualistic. It lends itself to more meditative kind of space, head space. Whereas the cigar seems to be more of a social thing. But a cigar is kind of a one-time deal. You smoke it and then you don't revisit it. Whereas a pipe, is a piece of art in your hand that you revisit over and over. But I appreciate both. First thing I ever smoked was a cigar on my bachelor party. Never smoked before that, but it's pretty good. But I'm gonna enjoy it today. Maybe make a few videos. Kind of have maybe a little short series of videos on my mind. And but I'm trying to shoot for around the 30-minute mark with these videos. So I may break it up. We'll just see how long I go, and we'll go from there. All right. So what's on my mind? Well, ultimately, what is on my mind is fatherhood. But with that, there's some other things I want to talk about around it, and I want to talk about fatherhood, not just individually, maybe some of that, but more fatherhood in our culture and the lack thereof. And really, there has been, I think, kind of an attack on fatherhood, and we're not better for it. And maybe that's what we need now more than ever. A return to good fatherhood. But how I want to start with that, well, there's two ways I could start with it. Maybe we'll just start with the part of the fatherhood piece, and then we'll go on to the motherhood piece, because I want to talk about that too. And I know I've talked about these, but they're just what's on my mind, and that's what these videos are for me to get what's out of my head onto a video. If somebody enjoys it, or if it helps somebody, good. But I can't control what happens on the other end of this camera. I can only control what happens on this end. So this end, this is, it's not really a two-way conversation. It's a one-way. It's a short informal lecture. That's what these are, if we're honest. Sometimes guys on YouTube try to call them discussions, but they're not really discussions. The podcasts are discussions that you're witnessing between, two or three people. But when it's just a guy talking like me right now, it's a lecture. It's a rant, you know. It's just the musings of one man, and you're enjoying listening to it, and that's fine. I think there's a place for that. So I want to talk about fatherhood. The thing about fatherhood is we've all seen it done poorly, and some of us have seen it done well. Yet all of us have seen it both. No matter how good your father was, he wasn't perfect. He had his sins, he had his foibles, had his habits, and some of it's not bad. It's just things that your personality and his personality didn't quite click. Or in his finiteness, he didn't know necessarily how to teach you well. And maybe in the moment it didn't feel well, and maybe now, if you're getting older, maybe you appreciate how good a job they did. Those kind of things. Overall, my father, I believe did pretty well with me. I'm under no illusion that he's perfect, but I am very thankful and appreciative for my dad. He's still an encourager to me. He's still one of my favorite people to be around. I love being around my dad. I love just sitting and talking with my dad, because me and my dad, we do sit together and smoke a pipe or smoke a cigar and just talk. And we talk about everything. And that's really where what I'm doing here. I'm talking to this camera the way that me and him talk. I'm talking about a lot of the same things. Who knows? Maybe one of these days I get him on one. That's just an idea I had. Because my dad taught me how to talk. He taught me how to speak, taught me how to look people in the eye, how to be self-confident, not in a prideful way, but how to believe in myself, how to talk with adults, how to be an adult. And really, that is kind of what I want to key in on. What is a father? What is the father's role? Because in life, in the reproduction of the human race, and almost all animals, on the biological side, the father contributes his seed, right? He contributes his seed, plants it in the womb, in the garden of the woman, in her womb, and it grows and it bears a child. And biologically, that seems to be it. And with a lot of animals, that's all they do. Bugs and a lot of creatures, the male, like bears, all kinds of things. The male comes along and they just procreate, and then they move on. There's nothing else that the father contributes to the relationship. Now sometimes, the animal is there, the father. Sometimes it's like a pride of lions, and the father's around and he's protecting the pride, but really the pride works for him, to protect that seed, because it is important for the production of life, obviously. But it seems that one of the most unique relationships for humans is that the father seems to be very involved. Unlike in the animal kingdom. The animal kingdom, most of the time, the father doesn't seem to be important at all, and the mother's only important for a short while. You know, they birth the baby and they raise the baby, but most of the time they're not really around. There's a few exceptions, maybe. But with humans, historically, the father is very involved. You know, early on, no. And that's the thing about being a father, and I'm a father of 2 children. You know, I contribute my seed, and then for 9 months, I'm not really involved intimately in the growing of that child in my wife's womb. It's all within the mother. And she's doing her best to stay healthy, but really even she's not doing anything. There's this it's that we, you know, we till the soil, we water, we sow seed, but God gives the growth. It's God who knits that baby in the mother's womb. But that's what's interesting, is that the Father is the one who knows what's going on. It's the Father who is forming that child in the mother's womb. And then the child comes out and it's attached to the mom. And dad's only role is to be a help, to help mom, to help with the baby, to give relief, to give her what she needs so she can be successful. However, as the child grows, and it comes measure by measure, right? Like my first little girl, after 2 years old, she started her affection started to switch, and she wanted to spend more time with dad. And she still needs both. But as she grows older, more and more she's going to need dad as well as mom. And this isn't coming from me. This, I think, I'm just repeating age-old wisdom. But I believe the father's main role with children and with the family is to prepare the child for the world, to raise up the child, and to teach the child how to live as an adult. Animals don't do that. I've talked about it before. If you're looking for the difference, the relationships that we have continuously as mothers and fathers and children and grandparents, that continues on for our lives when it's healthy. You know, sometimes it's not. Sometimes you got to get out of a situation or whatever, or the death happens, or the father dips out, or the mother dips out, all kinds of stuff. But the norm, the way it should be, the father should be there to protect and provide and help mom, help his wife, you know, and she does her part. She rules the roost. She helps beautify the home and make it this wonderful place where you can grow together. And together they're a team. And you need mom's love. You need that, you know. If there's anybody that loves unconditionally, it is a mom. Should be. You know, it's one of the ills of our culture is that even babies are not always safe in mama's womb where they should be. It's not a sign of a healthy culture. But a good father raises his children up, and he tells them the way they should go. And then as they get older, he'll tell them how to do some things. But then increasingly, measure by measure, a good father lets the child learn by experience. Trying to keep them safe, but then learn by experience. This is what I loved about being in Boy Scouts, because when Boy Scouts is done right, it's a boy-led organization. That's the vision for Boy Scouts. And I loved Boy Scouts, and I still love the vision for Boy Scouts. I don't like where it's gotten now, because it's just as woke as the rest of the culture. But the way scouting was meant to be was that it was boy-led. It was led by the youth. And the dads, the adults, they were there just to make sure nobody got hurt. And then to provide wisdom in the midst of what the boys were increasingly wanting to do. But it was the boys who were in leadership positions, and the scoutmasters were there to provide wisdom and knowledge that the boys didn't have. Right? To teach them things they didn't have, but they were increasingly supposed to let the boys make their own decisions and learn lessons, and a lot of it was also playful. It was games with a purpose. And that's what a dad's supposed to do. A dad's supposed to play with his kids. The dad is not just supposed to go to work and make money and then come home, eat dinner, and go to sleep. Now, sometimes that's all you got the capacity to do, and that's okay. But there should be times when the dad, the father, plays with the children, which is twofold. And there's even science behind this, that hormonally, like there's skin to skin touch between a baby and a mommy. There's these endorphins and these hormones that knit them together. But with dads, with the male, with the child, those hormones it is a bonding hormone, but it's a stirring up. It's an energizing hormone, and it's similar to what happens with mom, but it's different because it's twofold. It kind of makes them want to bash into each other. Like, boom, there's this violent collision, but then also like going out, right? There's this like equipping to move forward, to separate. And in a sense, there's a time where strategically the dad begins to remove the child from mom. Mom's still there, they still go back. But there are times when the dad removes child from the mom, gives the wisdom, and then sets the child out. And I may have mentioned this before, I probably have. The vision that I see is that Psalm 127 talks about, it's where we get that children are arrows in the quiver of a warrior. They're like arrows. Well, if children are an arrow, where's the bow that shoots the arrow? Well, the bow is the parents. And even though they're different, it's really like the arrow is held by God. God's the archer. The parents are not the archer, but the parents are the bow. They're both ends of the bow, and you need both. And they're bent to the Father's eye. And He's the one that aims and releases the arrow. And when the parents will let themselves be bent to the Lord's vision, and it lines the child up with the Lord's vision, they will hit the mark. That's my vision for what it means to be a family. But the piece that we seem to be missing, and it seems to be the most under attack, is the fatherhood piece. Because I think it's key. I think part of it is that fathers, the husband and the father, grounds the family together, holds the family together. Mom does too. It's not to say that mom doesn't. It's both and. Like, to me, I'm a true complementarian, which means they need each other. They are different, they are distinct, but they are equally valuable. And I think what we see in culture and in history is we see this flip flop where you're pitting one against the other, and that divisiveness is from the enemy, and that's what I want to talk about some more later. But the vision is together with the Lord, and that's the ultimate picture, is the Father. Why does God present himself as the Father in the Scriptures? Why did he reveal himself to the prophets and in the Bible to be written down as a father? Why did he present himself? Why did Jesus come to do what? Jesus came to bring us to the Father. There's a reason. Does that mean that God the Father is a male? God's spirit. God made male and female in his image. Doesn't mean he's transgender. Don't get weird about it, because that's a perversion. But God's beyond all that. But here's the thing. God's he's not a mother most of the time. Now there are some instances where God presents, he uses matriarchal mother language to describe how he's feeling about Israel and his people. But more often than not, especially as the Bible goes, it's more and more God is the Father. And I think that's for a reason. And I want to get into it some more. I'm just kind of laying out a vision for what I want to talk about. I think the roots of why the woke culture hates the patriarchy so much, and why feminism and all this other junk is, it's a hate of the father. It's a rebellion. It's the children rebelling against the father. Because when the child is immature, especially when the teenager seems to be immature, and I had that come up in my heart many times. The child wants to do his or her own thing, and the father's saying something other than that, and the child rebels and says, no, I'm not going to do that. And it doesn't end well, because the father sees what the child doesn't. And that's the thing. A father's love will tell the child the truth and set them on the right path, even if they don't like it. It ain't about always being friends with your children. I'm a friend with my dad now, but that's because he was my father first. He fathered me. He taught me, with the goal that someday I would be an adult and we could have an adult conversation and we could be friends. But we were not fast friends at first. He had to teach me how to live. I didn't know how to live. I'm a dumb child. Does this sound familiar? Does this sound the opposite of all the advice that is out there these days in the culture? We hate this stuff. We hate the masculine. We hate fatherhood. We hate the patriarchy. We hate parents raising their children. Because a good father will hold you responsible with grace. The Father holds us responsible for how we live our lives. We will be judged by the Father, but He holds us with grace. He says, this is the way, walk in it. But He gives us time to figure it out, to listen to Him. He's so gracious. I pray that we listen to the Father. And that's really my heart. What I want to talk about is that you need to know your Father. If you want to be a good dad, you got to listen to the Father. If you want to deal with and get healed from having a bad father, a lot of people have bad fathers. It's sad. It's true. They come from broken families, and their fathers were not good people. And there needs to be healing there. There needs to be forgiveness there. Otherwise, it's just gonna get worse. But life can feel better if you will connect with the Father. Your life will get better. Yeah, I guarantee that. If you seek the Father's face, you will find it. And you will find the most gentle God beyond your imagining. His gentleness has made me great. He's so merciful. It's mind-blowing. He is so the opposite of the accuser. Even though he has a high standard, higher than any of us live by. He says, be holy as I am holy. Ooh, that's hard. But it's good. And I think it's doable. With His grace, with the Holy Spirit. By the blood of Jesus, it's possible. It's not possible alone. And that's the whole point. No one knows how to be wise. No one knows how to live life automatically. No one just is born and then knows how to live. Those who live well, those who succeed well in life, almost all of them is because they had a good father, or they moved beyond their bad father. Those who are unsuccessful in life, it's usually because they had a bad father, or they rejected the father's advice. They're rejecting the father's love and their own father's love, and they chose their own way. But there's even stories like that start out rough and people come back because they went back to the Father. They were true prodigals, and they found the Father's love, and it restored them. Both their natural father and their heavenly Father. The Father leads well, and He's for you. And Jesus is seated at the right hand of the Father so that humanity has access to the Father. So I pray you take hold of that access. All right, we'll talk some more about fatherhood. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May His face shine upon you. May He give you His rest.